continuation about the 10-day gap as 2021 came over to 2022. There were horrific gaps that left the homeless in the most extreme, dire cold, extreme rain, extreme weather, ice, and that was so disturbing to me that I took the initiative to call companies. I one day was sitting at Beacon near Erin, and I said, I've just been so worried about the homeless. I've been calling the different clothing companies about, you know, depleted stocks of clothing and the need. And she said, wow, thank you. I might have you do that with some more companies. I need your help on that matter. And that was the spirit in which I did it, is I'm jumping in, I'm volunteering, I care deeply, I want the most good for the most people who are suffering this humanitarian distress, okay? So, Ozark out of the blue in February corners me, tries to drag me into his office when I'm sitting down in the low barrier section, and I'm not having it because I know he sexually harasses the homeless women and the Beacon Clubhouse women with his blue balls, sexual innuendo, and he threatens people with starvation on a regular basis. I know his judgment is off, and I'm not going in a private room with him given the types of stories I'm hearing. I didn't even know he was a drug dealer or had a criminal history at this point. I just knew he was a mentally unbalanced man. And he'd already been giving me dirty looks since like March, April 2021 when I basically began attending, and then took a long hiatus because he displayed his instability to me with a harsh reprimands on somebody undergoing mental distress after a death in the family. Very, very cold, heartless, and cruel attitude he took towards my family members. So I was like, okay, like it took a lot of energy for me to try to trust these people again and re-embed and see what they're doing. And he's trying to have this domination corner me in his office thing. I was concerned about a violent offender who had assaulted me having been seen in the area, so I had called the sheriff's department to check out the terms of the probation and see what's going on with that person in regards to my safety. So I got a call back from the sheriff's department right as Ozark was trying to have me cornered in his office, and he's doing his like aggressive body language, like "come here so I can berate you," like bullying body language. Okay, he's a small man, but he's got a bit of, I mean, you would say he's a man, you know, he's like bigger, stronger, I don't know, slightly overweight, I don't know, he's not going in an office with him alone, no way. Not after all the flirtatious looks and the dirty looks and the cascade of mood swings I'd already seen him go through with me or other clients. So I get upstairs, I'm a little shaky, I go get some water at the market. I go upstairs because I'm kind of like, okay, what is it? This dude, I realize, oh, Aaron's not here. So he needs another, like, top boss type A leader woman to cry on her shoulder or, like, bully, berate, lean on. He was leaning on me for support. It was the message I got out of it. So he does this whole, like, you know, I found out you've been calling these companies. And he wouldn't let me get a word in edgewise. I tried to, like, be like, but wait, Erin knows, she's cool with it, and that's all being donated to various, you know, homeless people. He basically was giving me a chew out about, you aren't allowed to do anything without my permission, and you have been misrepresenting our organization. He did not allow me to explain, no, I told the companies there are people you kick out who also need clothes because you won't give them clothes. There are people that the warming center also kicks out and they need clothes and boots because the warming center discriminates against them. So there are people in the margins falling through the cracks who also need resources. So just his organization grabbing all the resources or warming center grabbing all the resources is not fair to the extremely marginalized people. But in his mind, whatever confusion he told himself, He says, you are representing my company to try to gain donations behind my back without my permission. And that was absolutely not the case because I was representing the kind of awkward situation of multiple nonprofits not serving the public entirely. So that subtlety and abstraction did not fit with his conspiracy narrative, which is that I'm attempting, almost as if he's saying, embezzle or take for personal use. He didn't say that, but his implication was this was such a severe crime. And it appears that the crime that it apparently was a crime against his authoritarianism, which at that point I wasn't quite clear on how far he wanted to take his authoritarianism. I had pondered it. I wondered the origins. I wondered if it was cultural. I kept seeing different manifestations of him being a control freak. And one way I originally dealt with it was just by being like, oh yeah, I got OCD tendencies, so does he, but how can I predict what his OCD tendencies are? Because that would cause, I would have to be psychic to figure out what it is, tiny little thing he's going to start freaking out about. So I was like, basically, he wouldn't let me talk. I had my mask on. He's way too close to me. I feel he's way in my space. I at least have not let him corner me in his office, which would have been way more creepy. And at this point, I've gotten out of it. I'm kind of indulging him to listen to this cornered, chew you out routine. And I ponder it. I stay away for a few days. I finally go back and run into Aaron. Feel completely grossed out on the whole scene. Because I'm like, the level of disrespect and up in my face and accusatory and not letting me respond, trying to like be very argumentative and combative and like shoot down everything I said. And coming at me as if I'm a guilty person. And what is my crime? Trying to get clothing and boots on the poor when you've already asked me to volunteer for your clothing closet, exploited my free labor therein. And when I made those phone calls, I was too sick to go out and deal with the public. I was doing it because it was the only thing I could do with a half a raspy voice. And I felt so much emotional stress about their poverty. I also felt concern for Aaron and Ozark's paranoia that the whole neighborhood was out to get them. Just like helping an old lady get across the street or carrying some groceries, I was doing something good, I thought, at the time that would be greatly rewarded, greatly appreciated. Oh, thank you very much, just as Aaron graciously thanked me. So then I go and talk to Aaron, and I'm like, I don't get what's going on with Ozark. What's his deal? Then she's like, oh yeah, people go to the pizza parlor and say they're filling empty bellies and like get a free pizza. And I know you're not like that. And I'm like, you're accusing me of trying to get donations? That was her interpretation of what Ozark was implying, is that I'm trying to get donations siphoned off for my personal benefit. And nothing could be further from the truth. So then later, fast forward a year, after I, blow the whistle in my email about his sexual innuendo and all the crime and everything in the neighborhood and assaults and bullying, he's telling the Harbor, the domestic violence advocate, trying to get my CCA issued voucher for his clothing closet to give me like 2 t-shirts and 2 sweatpants or something. Like, hello, can we work something out? Like, hello, how long are you going to boycott her? He mouths off saying, she's lucky we didn't press charges on her for trying to solicit donations in our name. And that is extremely offensive to me because I have given massive donations to the previous incarnation of Filling Bellies. I had been eating at Filling Bellies for years. All my friends go there, and I give the shirt off my own back, my own clothing coats, personal items on a regular basis long before Ozark was ever involved with Filling Bellies. I was very close to people who attend there. So his understanding that I could now do nothing without his permission, and if I did so, it was a crime, when, as far as I could tell, He was neglecting size 32 pants, and he was neglecting boots. He was discriminating against giving them to all people fairly, and there was a lot of need. And that neglect of the vulnerable and homeless, I noticed. And that's why I made those calls, because that needed to be immediately remedied. So, this point of this video was to help explain how irrational and flamboyant and outlandish it is for him to allege that my attempts to gain donations for the poor was in any way a criminal act. Especially as he was sitting on $200,000 according to his charitable filing, and denying clothing to the poor. Fast forward to him then calling the police after I record him making these false allegations, suggesting that making the recording of his defamation is itself a crime, which one party recording in a phone call is not a crime in the state of Oregon. And it seemed to me very necessary given the elevated histrionic tone he had taken with his aggressive letter writing campaign from his aggressive lawyers and his aggressive concealment of criminal behavior. So anyway, I'll tell you more about it later, but I thought we should just clear the air on that as to why Ozark Orak's false allegations against me won't stick, are completely illogical, paranoid, and untrue, and furthermore are very hurtful to the poor. And it is very hurtful to think you could go in there for a plate of free salad and a free t-shirt and end up getting stuck in some criminal sting by a delusional madman who happens to be the executive director of the suddenly high salaried, pompous job his girlfriend wrote him to pay for their baby's existence. And that itself is mind-blowing because it's top-heavy authoritarianism concealing criminal wrongdoing and neglect and persecuting low level. And one thing about the phone call, because I realized, oh gosh, he's so horrible with humans. He's so rude and aggressive to everyone he meets or interacts with. I felt like what's going to be great about me calling is I'm very diplomatic and I'm good with words. And so I can sense the tone and sense, hopefully prime the pump of the donations. So the poor were less suffering. And one lady, I believe, asked, well, what do you do, or how are you involved? And I said, oh, I just love talking to the homeless, and I bring my knitting, and I sit there, knit. I don't do much. I volunteer occasionally to clean. And for whatever reason, I believe her understanding was that because of my professional sounding voice, she assumed I was an employee. Ozark, she then told Ozark, oh, I talked to your worker. And my work was volunteer basis. Aaron had said, oh, maybe we have a role for you. Maybe there's a role we can carve out for you because your skills as an advocate are amazing. And he then said, you've been misrepresenting yourself as working for us. And I was like, well, we all work here because you demand free labor of us. But he doesn't view that as work. And so volunteering is not anything he considers. It's sort of like a classic disregard that non-monetized labor constantly pushes on, females frequently, more so. And so therein rose the grounds for her misunderstanding, or might have been the basis for him to allege a false conspiracy of me misrepresenting myself in a fraudulent or deliberately malicious mens rea, which means an intent in the mind to misrepresent. And the way he was so eager to have this gotcha moment. I mean, other people are bringing meth onto the premises. I'm not. I'm not doing drugs. I'm not drunk. I'm not outrageously bad behaved like a lot of his clients. So he really had to bend over backwards to come up with this concocted conspiracy against me to justify his hatred, which he had already been exhibiting signs of hatred and discrimination against me, primarily possibly because I'm female, butch, GLBT. I don't know if it's 'cause my finished cheekbones. I don't know if it's my skin tone or what it is that makes him hate me. Oh, my bisexuality, maybe as a threat to steal away his girlfriend. I don't know where he had so much hatred he was exhibiting towards me immediately. But that itself is dangerous and it delegitimizes his authority. And the very notion that I would feel safe and comfortable speaking with him about, hey, should I call Haley Hansen and see where the jackets are? Was a no go because I would never speak to someone who sexually harasses homeless women. I did everything I could to avoid him and avoid any interactions with him because he's hot tempered and irrational and mentally disturbed. And this incident just left me even more profoundly disturbed about his behavior. Once I knew he was targeting me, I knew he would try to push me out of the organization entirely. I then follow up with a phone call to Aaron about a month later explaining, I don't feel safe watching all these assaults. I don't like being cornered by Ozark. He was very head down and sulking, like a little reprimanded puppy. What do you mean I can't even corner you or talk to you? She said she would do everything possible to make sure that women only communicate with me because I said disturbing abuse by males is very triggering of past trauma. So she was trying to make accommodations for my disability. Ozark then went into remission. He stayed away from me for about a month. And then when he had engaged in this lynch mob rhetoric, which was just so offensive in this meeting, I put forward the email I'd been working on for weeks about his innuendo and about all the other, drama, abuse, and assaults. And that's when he calls to trespass me from the facility for writing an email. And other people do assaults and get to go on a regular basis, do like horrendous things. And that itself, the double standard, is perplexing. And then Aaron says, well, you're welcome anytime. We can stagger you so you don't have to come when Quentin is here, because Quentin was doing this violent assault that I witnessed. And I'm like, why would I want to go only on the chances that the violent perpetrator isn't there or any of the other harassers or creepos? So at least she wasn't willing to kick me out. So when I call her on Monday with a different clothing voucher, I'm like, okay, can I pick up my clothing? Or are you going to, do I have to send a third party in? Or am I kicked out from Beacon and Filling Bellies? I don't get it because I thought Ozark was beneath Aaron in terms of power hierarchy. And she was like, well, if Ozark says you're not allowed to run the property, I could put you on the phone with him. And then she panicked, like she'd already told me she was not going to let him corner and abuse me. So then she's like offering the phone over so he can be abusive with me and asking me if it's okay. And he was very brassy. He's like, have a nice day. Like, you are not allowed anywhere near the property, blah, 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 blah. But the one thing Erin said right before she put him over was, well, your letter has a lot of accusations. And I'm like, the thing is, they were busy whitewashing all the trouble of the homeless. They didn't actually want any facts about their real problems. So the facts were disturbing. And I put it in writing, and I wasn't going. The letter was, this is why I'm not going. I expected they would meet with me and treat me like a human being in a sort of arbitration roundtable type of a way, where we like hash it all out, and I am allowed to speak, and then they can speak, and everything's done diplomatically. So nothing like that has ever happened. And I even thought, well, I'll go over their heads to Kirk Wintermute from the board of directors, or to Corey Buck. I spoke to her and just let them know what's going on to see if they are okay with it, or they can provide guidance, because that's what a board should do. A board, if there's a runaway executive director acting like a prick and being a jerk and being mean to people and unfair, the board should rain down the bad leadership. And instead they rubber stamped it and threatened me. So that was a part of the saga. And I can't wait for their 22 financials to come out, because everybody says they gave themselves massive raises. And I'm wondering if they can even come up with some financials, or if some crazy stuff happens. One thing I do remember was Ozark putting a contribution check in his personal account once, and he was calling the bank to correct it. And he would do this type of personal business in front of me as if I'm just like nobody. At one point, he didn't even know my last name. He was like, "What's your last name?" I'm like, I was just a nobody until he got all sketched on me because my landlord's apartment manager resigned after a series of emails that I generated, basically a whistleblowing email. So he was like really worried about me or something. But I was surprised that. Well, anyway, more later.